Explains a lot about why Dark Ranger is working right now. The true shot treacherous transmitter synergy is really strong. Gonna lose some damage here for not having any AoE, but not enough AoE in this part of the fight to justify being AoE spec. Especially as Dark Ranger, where I want as many Black Arrow procs as possible. It's so funny that how once you do the mythic version of any boss, even the heroic version is just like snooze fest. No stakes, no difficulty, just whatever, gotta get the boss done. I hate it when the transmitter makes me jump, though. That is a big drag.
So.
Watch your step.
This is kind of a funny part of the fight where you hear Queen Ansarek be like, destroy the supports, send them into the pit below, and it's like, wait, so why are we still here fighting this guy? Maybe we should have just like listened to that and fucking bounced.
Watch your step.
Like, why are we letting her do that? Why are we letting her get away with it?
Opposite side of the ads. Pally, freedom and run through these webs. Give us a little smoke. Watch out.
Charging. Charging. Watch your step.
Oh my god. I'm scared. I'm very scared. Yeah, I'm feeding him, dude. That's all I do. Feed the boss. Feed him these bug burgers. Alright, bro is fed and so am I. I got cooldowns and I got gumption.
Watch your step.
Alright, sick.
We're passing everything or having
No.
Nope. Indeed, agreed, whatever. It's
Use the in-game loot system has been called. Yeah, I'll roll transmog on that, bro. Yeah, I'm not gonna actually roll on that. That'd be a dick move. There are people here that might actually need that, and they can have it. My own desire for transmog is not valid. No, I'm not gonna. They're gonna drag me into combat, huh? Okay, that's fine. Then I'll just do no damage. I'll just do no damage because I'm in single target right now, with a big smile on my face. That's another surprise. Not able to switch to AoE before they started pulling trash. There's another surprise. Nothing but wall-to-wall surprises. Alright. Let's actually see if we can explore what Dark Ranger AoE feels like. Because of course, Dark Ranger only became good a week ago, and there was that 3-day period where I couldn't stream or play World of Warcraft, so I had a whole lot of time to be able to actually do some science and see how I feel about the Dark Ranger playstyle. But Sentinel, the other hero talent, has a different trinket that it uses as its best in slot. And its cooldown is different. Scarden's Grace is a 2-minute cooldown. Treacherous Transmitter has a 90-second cooldown. And with various ways that current Hunter talents reduce the cooldown of True Shot, I'm getting better alignment between True Shot and Treacherous Transmitter than True Shot and Scarden's Grace.
Sorry, that was sushi.
There's another.
That's always going to feel a lot more satisfying, especially in a raid environment where you want all your cooldowns to line up.
Oh, we pulled.
Are we catching bodies here? Are people dying in the trash? Is that what's up? Am I about to die to the trash? Am I catching bodies? Surely not me. No one would do that to the hunter.
Man, I jumped into something and I'm like stuck in it.
That explains it. If the tank fell into something and can't get out, that will explain why mobs are suddenly coming after me. That solves
stuck in
that
here.
missing ring mystery.
Just summon me when you get to a point you can. Oh, KFC could try to life grip me, I guess.
Oh my god. Get down here. Oh my
Oh,
god.
nice, that worked.
Oh my god. Yeah, we're fine. We're so fine. We're taking what we're given because we're working for a living. Fantastic. Now the real question is, should I stay in AoE for this boss? And I think the answer is no. Not going to spend
Try
enough
all the others,
time
though.
DPSing mobs to make it worth it. It is somewhat annoying that some classes don't have to make that choice. They can just go their raid DPS spec, and it's got great AoE and great single target. That must be nice for them. But for my silly little favorite class, what I have to do is decide, do I want to have AoE or not during the boss fight? And I definitely enjoy the class fantasy of that, of like, oh, I've got to just, I'm the sharpshooter. I'm the guy that just shoots the boss a bunch. Someone else will handle the ads. But on a practical matter, it means that if you can say, like a survival hunter, not lose any DPS in your raid build by also having your AoE abilities, well, that's certainly nice for you. It's a nice thing for you to have. Ooh, Blood's gathering them all up. Blood's doing a roundup. Everyone wisely backing off so that when the boss spawns, we don't pull it immediately. I love seeing smart teammates. I probably shouldn't have used that there, but 1 minute cooldown, we're probably fine. That's why I did want to use it there, because if this trinket kills the target it's attacking,
I'm gonna have to reset.
it cools down in 1 minute. We're gonna have to reset, someone says? Fuck. Why even fucking bother? If we're gonna have to reset. Oh,
I was gonna try to reset it. looks like I'm in the odd group. I am glad that this has been relatively easy to get into and get done. Because it's not like I never thought I'd be able to pug heroic normally, but to be able to do it with people I know is definitely preferable.
Okay, for this one, ads are going to come up once you get hit with the frontal. If you want to get hit, you're going to stay with your tank at all times. If your tank rotates, make sure you're rotating with them. When you get hit by the frontal, you're going to kind of go into a void zone where you have to kill ads and keep these small ads from getting the boss. So either stun them, push back on them, or just kill them. When you get back out of that zone, be aware that there is going to be a beam you need to avoid and circle around the boss. And then he will cast a rather large AoE circle on Discord, which means you have to come back out to this outer circle, otherwise it will try to get you. Am I missing anything, Clay? Okay.
All right. We're gonna keep cruising right through this raid. Maybe we will be able to get Ansurek with this group. That'd be pretty sick.
I'll grab my first solution.
I would love to have
If
Ansurek in
first
my vault.
ads appear on green or yellow, so we kind of prioritize to the right, counterclockwise. So if the first ads appear on green or yellow, you'll take them back, and yeah.
I went to the wrong side.
And then as the tank, just remember, like, if the ads appear kind of, far in front of you where you're worried your group won't all get there to take the frontal, you don't have to be on them for the frontal. Just, be where it's safe your group's going to be in the frontal, and then you can all just go there after.
Makes sense.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Okay, odds first.
Odds first has been called.
Yeah, brown tentacles. Yeah, take tentacles out of the group.
Stay away from lines.
Here's a beam. Watch out for it.
So you just not enough AoE there to warrant losing some single target throughput. Mobs are already dead. We're already back to single target again. Calculus probably changes a bit on Mythic, where those ads live longer. That's almost certainly a thing.
Flint on green, Eaton's on blue.
But that's why the mage was able to overtake me there on damage. The mage just gets to have access to their AoE
Shooting at
abilities
Eaton's.
and their single target abilities. Incredible.
Stay here to soak. Kill the ads.
At least they finally gave us explosive shot baseline. So we get a little something.
Stay away from lines.
Oh my god.
Watch out, Beach coming.
I didn't position that very good. Sorry, guys. It's coming right to you.
Go, guys, go. Carry with us.
Yeah, so see, Lucian, I should have came further back around so you guys had more time before that beam got to you, because however he's facing me, it goes out of his left and right side, you know.
We're clawing our way back up though. We're clawing our way back up. This is a really fun and well-designed fight, by the way.
Get far back.
No, no, no.
Watch your feet.
One of the better second bosses they've ever done, for sure.
Watch your feet.
In fact, it almost plays like in an earlier expansion's raid, it would have been like the 5th or 6th boss.
We'll have one of the ads, money ads over there by blue, so Shadow Storm, go over and deal with that, please.
Copy that.
Stay away from lines.
Here comes Beach. Watch out, guys.
Yeah, I got it.
Watch your feet.
Played amazingly well. You love to see it. You love to see when you play amazingly well. Makes me happy.
We'll end up on orange odds. You guys will have an ad spawn and ad clear over by blue as well. Sweet.
Hey, everybody stay right here. I'll go take care of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to spawn the laser just past that ad.
Stay away from lines.
Oh, it's right on it, so be careful.
Black Arrow also gives you a lot more mobility
Chaos
compared to Sentinel as well.
in their
It's
own
kind of
group, by
crazy.
the way. If we get another
That's
one,
exactly what I
oh,
feared.
please try this
That playing
I am in the
Dark Ranger would just feel mechanically more enjoyable. Like, thematically, I'd rather be Sentinel. And mechanically, I like a lot of things about Sentinel, especially in Mythic Plus. It feels like a baby wild spirits from back in Shadowlands. That shit was fucking awesome. But in a raid environment, especially a single target boss like this, I am seeing a lot of really appealing aspects.
Shadow Storming here. So you'll want hits one beam, so it's like right, you know.
Got my cooldowns for this one.
Stay away from lines.
Oh shit, he's not even alive yet. Just realized.
Be good. Come on, just kill him. I'm taking
I just got meleeed. I just got meleeed. I just got meleeed. Well, whatever. We clutched it out. It's fine. We clutched it out. It's fine. as I have said on stream many times,
Anyways.
only takes a few weeks into the season to make even heroic level raid pretty puggable, pretty accessible. You don't have to be in a guild anymore. You can just go in the group finder. And that's what we did. This is like 3/4 people from my guild that weren't there on Tuesday, / people that were there but
No
on
need to do
well-geared
like,
alts.
quests over again, right?
And then some people from the group finder. And we're crushing it. We're just cruising
Got
along.
it.
We're having a good time. Back to AoE. Well, that's the end of that mix. Oh my god. Do I have something queued up? Ooh. That's an hour-long banger that I want to be able to give more attention to. Let's do a Lost in Adaptation.
Gosh darn it, we've been stuck in these sewers for hours. How are we ever going to find our way home? Okay,
Also, Dom looking pretty wide. Bro's been working out. Looking pretty brolic.
have an idea, and hear me out. What if we all cut?
Yeah, that's in the book. That is in the book.
Nope. Nope. We're cutting, like, all of that. Oh, yes.
Saturday run's just free for all.
Just do a group hug or
That's how
something.
we've done it, sort of.
Hello, my beautiful watchers, and welcome
Hello,
to
Dom.
Lost in Adaptation, the review show about the relationships between films and the books they're based on. If there was any author who needed no introduction, it would be Stephen King, as it is not hyperbolic to claim that he is one of the most famous living authors in the world. But let's introduce him anyway. Born in Portland, Maine, USA in 1947, King published his first novel, Carrie, in 1974. Since then, he's written over 200 short stories and 65 novels that have collectively sold 400 million copies worldwide. Despite writing successful books in multiple genres, including crime, mystery, science fiction, and what I can only describe as emotional gut-punching, he is inescapably most famous for being the king of horror. And his arguably most famous contribution to that genre was his 22nd book, It, which he wrote from 1980 to 1985 and published in 1986. Extremely summarized, it's the story of a group of people who live in the fictional town of Derry, Maine, who are haunted by a mysterious shape-shifting demon known as Pennywise, or It, who often takes the form of a clown and kidnaps and feeds on little children. The story is
Great.
cut into two timelines, one where the POV heroes are 10 to 11 years old and one set nearly 30 years later. It's worth noting at this point that Mr. King has been pretty open about his past struggles with substance abuse, being effectively an alcoholic and cocaine addict for most of the 70s and 80s before getting sober, which he has apparently remained for the past 30 years. Good for
Good for him.
This timeline implies that It was one of the last books that he wrote while heavily under the influence, which explains so much and is honestly kind of a relief. There are things in this book that no human being should have been able to conceive of, so it's oddly comforting to know that they didn't. A fuck ton of Schedule II narcotics conceived of it. It's not even that it's a super scary book, though don't get me wrong, it is scary as heck, but it's also just such a weird book. There's so much weird and uncomfortable shit in this. I didn't need to hear.
He remembered how the flesh of his testicles had begun to crawl, how his bowels had suddenly felt all loose and hot, as if he might suddenly drop a casual load of shit into his pants.
Here, what effect that fear had on the 11-year-old boy's testicles, Mr. King. I refuse to believe that the child's scrotum was an irreplaceable part of the descriptive writing. Despite King being the second most adapted into film and TV author in history, second only to the late great Agatha Christie, what could be considered good adaptations of his work are famously hard to find, at least regarding the horror books. We got a few good adaptations out of the other genres. The most successful of them tended to reject
Shining.
his writing and kind of did their own thing, and
Yeah, did
the
their own
ones that
thing.
were more loyal to the original ended up coming off as kind of
Weird.
goofy. This includes the film that Stephen King himself adapted and directed in an attempt to finally, and I quote, do it right.
I just wanted someone to do Stephen King right.
You want a war? You got one.
There's been a lot of debate over the years as to why this is, and I'm absolutely going to give my own 2 cents on this later, but for now, suffice to say, this apparent adaptation curse has never stopped people from trying to bring Mr. King's work to screen, and it was no exception. The first attempt took the form of a 1990s TV miniseries starring Tim Curry in one of his career-defining roles. It's one of the relatively higher-regarded adaptations, but it still suffers from a lot of the now classic issues. What was genuinely scary in the book often comes across as mildly amusing, and the long periods of inactivity between the horror scenes that helped develop the characters and build suspense in the novel just didn't translate well to screen and ended up dragging. If there's enough interest, I might cover this series as like a Patreon and Nebula exclusive, but for now, let's move on to the film under review today. A big-budget cinematic
just throw a
interpretation of the
mark,
book was in the works as
like,
far back
right
as
up there.
2009 with David Kidjanik, a seasoned horror screenwriter
get
heading the
those
adaptation
charges
process,
with the
but
red-
it
or people
ran
get
into
charges with the
never-ending
red arrow on
problems
their head,
because
and
he
they
was
need to create a
envisioning the
box
project
around
as
that
a
mark.
single film, and the sheer size and complexity of the novel made that virtually impossible. The idea to split the story
people
into
get
2 films
decimate
came with director
After that,
Cary
with the blue arrows,
Fukunaga,
and they
who
need
became
to
attached to the
paste them
project in
towards those images that the marks leave,
Wipe them out. Yep.
and then you just rinse and repeat it going clockwise after that.
Yep, simple as. No need to explain it. We can just grip it and rip it. Let's fucking go, dude.
And when he
Let's
does
fucking
the
go,
big
dude.
circle around him, the shattering sweep, you gotta, it's fall off damage, so the further you get from the boss, the less damage you take.
in 2012. However, his vision ended up facing almost as much pushback as he wanted to take the film in a more risque art house direction that allegedly drew on his and his writer's own childhoods more than King's novels. So things stalled again despite Fukunaga's claim that King had given the script his blessing. The film finally made it out of pre-production when Andy Muschietti replaced Fukunaga as director. Fukunaga supposedly remained on the project in a writing capacity, but appears to have been uncredited. Casting minors is always a bit of a calculated stab in the dark because of the inevitable lack of past experience, but for the most part they got crazy lucky on this one, jumpstarting the careers of several up-and-comers, including Jaden Lieberher, thankfully wiping away the stain of association with Book of Henry before it escalated into another Jake Lloyd situation, Jeremy Ray Taylor, Sophia Lillis, Finn Wolfhard, Jack
Yeah, the
Dylan
cast was
Grazer,
amazing.
Wyatt Olaf, and Chosen Jacobs. Will Poulter, who no matter what else he does in his career will always be used to scrub to me, was allegedly originally cast as the titular It, aka Pennywise the Clown, but had to drop out over scheduling conflicts to be replaced with Bill Skarsgård, who got a lot of use out of his natural ability to move his eyeballs independently while in the role. While locations were scouted in Maine, the majority of the film was shot in Canada, because every film is shot in Canada. It is so much cheaper. Okay, quick heads up. The extra runtime that they got out of splitting the story into 2 films might have misled a few of you into a false sense of optimism regarding finally getting adaptations that have the time to do the book justice and wouldn't have to condense things to the extreme like what usually happens. 2
I never
films,
thought that would be the
both
case.
of which are over 2 hours long. Surely, this time they can cover all
Nope.
the essentials. Well,
Nope.
alas, in any other circumstance that might be true, but this bastard is, as the kids say, dummy
Thick.
thick.
Sure,
The
yeah.
hardback is 1,138 pages long. They
I
needed
don't know
2
about that
films just to
placement,
scratch
but
the
fair
surface of this tome. Is all of it completely necessary to the story? No, of course not. Some of it's clearly self-indulgent, drug-fueled madness, but does the film suffer for its absence? Well, let's talk adaptation. The story setting, the American town of Derry, Maine, is pretty book accurate. Considering it's so significant in the book, it's basically a character in of itself. It would have been a very bad sign if they'd not been willing to go the extra mile to get this right. The famous Georgie death opening is spot on right up until the end of it, but we'll come back to that. The ill-fated young lad makes a paper boat with his bedridden big brother, chases it down the waterlogged streets, falls behind it due to an unfortunate meeting with a construction barrier, allowing it to sail into a storm drain where it's retrieved by what appears to be a clown, who introduces himself as Pennywise and tricks Georgie into reaching in to retrieve it, then promptly confiscates his frickin' arms. They even included Georgie's slightly nerve-wracking trip into the basement to get the paraffin required for waterproofing. Sometime later, the late Georgie's big brother Bill and his friends Stanley, Eddie, and Richie are trying to make it through their young lives in a town with a shockingly high unsolved child abduction rate and some school bullies whose behavior borderlines on criminal insanity. They'd picked up the insulting nickname The Losers Club, but have somewhat reclaimed and taken ownership over the title. Also long-time sufferers at the hands of the bullies, especially their leader Henry, are their classmates Ben, Mike, and Beverly. Considerably worse than their human antagonists is the ever-increasing intense supernatural encounters they all start having, which vary in shape and form but usually involve a balloon or clown motif, and can't be perceived by any adults despite occurring right in front of them. On the last day of school, the bullies hunt Ben down and Henry attempts to carve his name into him with a knife, prompting Ben to fight back and flee into an area near town known as the Barren Lands, where he happens to come across the Losers Club and is accepted into their ranks. Later, Beverly is drawn into the group as well, partly due to mutual bonding over their clown hauntings, and Mike is likewise adopted when he comes to them for help escaping the human bullies, leading to a heroic victory for the Losers Club over their tormentors using well-aimed rocks. Pennywise proves himself to be an equal opportunities monster by devouring Patrick, one of Henry's lackeys. The club eventually realizes that Pennywise has been terrorizing Derry for as long as recorded history, and he seems to be using a dilapidated abandoned house as a lair, so attempt to confront it there, somehow actually wounding it but taking several injuries themselves in exchange. Their quest to fight back against their supernatural predator eventually leads them into the sewers under Derry, where they're attacked by Henry, who's recently been induced by his clown sponsor to use a switchblade he was sent in the mail to murder his shitty father. Against all odds, the kids evade their human bully and actually overcome the supernatural one, working together to hurt it, though they don't confirm its death, which will obviously prove to be a bit of a mistake later on. The kids then swear a post-victory blood oath that if Pennywise ever rises again, they would all return to Derry and kill it once and for all. Almost all of the ways that Pennywise haunts the gang is changed in some way or another, but there were some notable exceptions to this, namely Eddie's encounter with the leper, though it's worth noting with some disdain that he was continuously offering the child a blowjob throughout the encounter in the book. Stephen. When Paul Beverly's bathroom got drenched in blood from the drain and the resulting cleanup job, and Pennywise taking the form of Georgie's ghost to fuck with Bill. A lot of things are repeated in the book over and over again. Hi-ho silver away, beep beep Richie, and of course Pennywise talking about floating. The film cuts down on these things overall, like it cuts down on everything, but they made sure each one got at least one shout out, which I appreciate. Beverly and Henry's violently abusive fathers and Eddie's mother, who's abusive in a very different but still damaging way, are a much more important aspect from the book to include than they might appear at first glance. I'm unfortunately pretty bad at picking up on metaphor and allegory, but even I couldn't miss how Pennywise represented the trauma of abuse in the book and how people who suffer from it in childhood carry it over into adulthood or even subconsciously seek it out for themselves if it's left unresolved. It would have been a real failure of adaptation if this wasn't represented in the film, so I'm relieved they didn't mess it up. Moving on to the film's characters, despite some pretty inconsequential omissions, I'm willing to say that most of the Losers Club is impressively loyal to King's book. Bill's speech impediment, his oversized bicycle named Silver after the Lone Ranger's horse, and his unofficial status as the group's leader. Due to some storyline changes, how he deals with his grief over losing his baby brother Georgie changed, but he was obviously hecking screwed up over it in both versions. Young Beverly's addiction to cigarettes, her instinctive kindness to underdogs like Ben, and her romantic feelings for Bill. Richie's thick glasses and complete inability to stop cracking jokes or doing weird, silly voices no matter the situation, or terrible consequences. Eddie's psychological dependence on a placebo inhaler filled with water to cure the anxiety attacks he's been told is asthma by his mother. Stanley suffers a bit more than average from the film's streamlining, cutting down on character development scenes, but some things about him made it in a reduced form, like getting targeted for being Jewish and struggling more than the others to accept the supernatural elements of their deadly situation as it conflicts with his very rational nature. Ben dealing with constant harassment due to his weight and the intense crush that he has on Beverly that inspires him to send her an anonymous poem on a postcard. However, the exception to the accurate character representation is Mike. Like, there's nothing specifically wrong with his role in the movie, it's just there's so much that didn't make it in regarding what he has to deal with growing up in Derry. He's the only person I can't in good conscience say was book accurate. So, let's talk about...
Sounds like it was a lot.
There's a major format change to the way the story is told, beyond the obvious visual medium, and while it changes very little about the story itself, the effect it has on the way the reader or watcher experiences the story cannot be overstated. Put plainly, the child portion of the story and the 27 years later adult parts that were covered in It Chapter 2 are told simultaneously in the book. The narrative regularly switches back and forth between them, so the mirroring stories unfold together. But when they made the film, they chose to split things up into the timelines instead of the first and second linear halves of the book. So let's think about how this would
That seems like a pretty obviously bad idea. I feel like they should have both been filmed simultaneously, like Lord of the Rings. Like, some of the most interesting parts of the book are the kid chapters. So by doing the adult part second, it's like inherently not going to be as good as the first movie, right?
Contextualize certain things. You read about Stanley's suicide before you get to know Stanley as a kid. You read every chapter told from his perspective about every event he takes part in, every bit of character development that he went through as a young man with full knowledge that he's not going to make it. While the amnesia plot of the adult timeline prevents serious spoilers, several things are vaguely referenced before they occur in the kid's timeline, foreshadowing truly horrifying events and building tension when you realize they're about to occur. They adjusted some things to account for this in the second film, but for the most part, like I said, it doesn't fundamentally change the story. But the order in which these events are revealed to you is so wildly far from the author's original intention, I still think it makes it the biggest change of the whole adaptation. Amusingly, because there's a 30-year gap between the two timelines of the book, i.e. the late 50s and the late 80s, and the film was made about 30 years after the book was published, by making It Chapter 2 contemporary, the first film is now taking place in what would have been the adult's decade. As to why they did this, well, it's always easier to film in modern times, especially if you're filming outdoors, and the less far back into the past you have to go, the easier it is to find buildings and cars that wouldn't be obviously anachronistic. An additional incentive might have been the recent hype for Stranger Things on Netflix that signaled the world was entering its nostalgic for the 80s phase, and a story about a ragtag group of preteen misfits in this era could be extremely popular. Which is kind of funny because Stranger Things was clearly heavily inspired by Stephen King's work, and it really amuses me when a parody influences the original. Like when House and Watson's dynamic became popular, and from then on we were inundated with Dr. Watsons who were just super done with Sherlock shit. King described Pennywise as looking a bit like Bonzo the Clown, a fictional character popular in the 1940s, but that he actually looked a lot more like Ronald McDonald. But my gods, can you imagine that lawsuit? If a whole generation of kids became too terrified to eat at McDonald's because of this movie? Honestly, bro's creepy enough as it is, he doesn't need any more bad rep. On paper, Pennywise only tore poor Georgie's arm off and left the rest of his body to bleed out on the rainy street, to be discovered by the townsfolk and returned to his family. In the film, the unlucky lad is fully dragged into the sewers, disappearing without a trace as far as anyone knows, except for one traumatized cat. This allowed them to make an ultimately fruitless search for Georgie a driving force for young Bill, and the reason that he led his friends into the barren lands around the town where most of the plot happens, replacing that it was just their hangout in the book. Henry and his cronies were supposed to be only a little bit older than the Losers Club, having been kept back a year at school. It appears they've been aged
Well, I
up to
know
at
that.
least
That
driving
was
age in
pretty
the
wide,
film,
right?
although I'm not entirely
Just
sure
thought it
what
was gonna,
age that
like,
would
suck
be
on
in
some
1980s
damage, but
Maine.
that's straight up
It feels
playboy.
like Americans give driver's licenses to babies sometimes. The order of events is a little tricky to keep straight in one's head in regards to the book because of the way it switches back and forth between the two timelines, but I'm pretty sure Patrick's death was moved up significantly. The poor bastard never even got a chance to bully the Losers Club, he was killed so fast. His backstory is one of the victims of the film's
Okay, quite honestly, that's
streamlining.
the
In
first
the
time I've
build-up
ever
to his
got deadheaded
demise,
killed.
King revealed that he was actually a clinical sociopath who genuinely didn't believe that anyone but himself was a real person, and as a result was potentially much more dangerous than Henry, his supposed leader.
there's a
Patrick,
roller,
it turns out,
and then
had
it
murdered
fades
his
out
baby
to
brother
the
via
side.
smothering simply because his
That's the
existence
way
was
it's gonna roll.
inconveniencing him, and routinely stole the townsfolk's pets so he could starve them to death in an old fridge he had found in the junkyard. And there's
Jesus.
this
Yeah, if it's
kind of
fading out
creepy
to the
scene in
left,
which
like,
Beverly
the big
witnesses him
roller is
attempting to
more to the
seduce
right side of
Henry,
it, and
and
then it fades
I'm
out
not
left, and
sure if it
go to the
represented him
left.
actually
The
being
big roller
homosexual or
is,
was just
you know,
attempting
more-
some weird
That-
power
that's
play
where
over
it
him.
starts.
His death also went down
Yeah.
quite differently. Book Pennywise had a flair for irony, so he ambushed him from within the death fridge as a swarm of giant leeches that drained most of Patrick's blood before dragging him down to its lair for, well, honestly, one of the creepiest lines of the book. Mr. Keen the down to its lair for, well, honestly, one of
paper lays either to
He
the right or
awoke
to the
only
left-hand side of
once,
it.
when in some dark, smelly, drippy hell where no light shone, no light at all, it began to feed.
the creepiest lines of the book. Mr. Keen the pharmacist is done hecking dirty by the
Or 3
film,
or
who
4,
depicted
yeah.
him as a leering potential pedophile. I assure you he was a decent person in the book, and the only guy with enough courage to try to tell Eddie that he didn't actually have asthma, and his mother's overbearing parenting was what was causing all his anxiety attacks. So, I mentioned before how Mike's journey was significantly more off-book than his friends, and the main reason for this is dealing with racism was an every minute
Yeah.
of every
Everyone's done it
day
normally.
thing for this poor bastard. Another commonly accepted interpretation of Pennywise is the embodiment of
It's on her
systemic
because you get a big
racism.
soak
You wouldn't
circle
know
at the
it
end
just
of
from
the
watching this
chase
film,
each
but
round.
holy balls, Derry was racist as hell. Derry was racist even by regular 1950s standards. King went out of his way in the book to make it clear that no matter how horrible Henry was to any other character, it paled in comparison to the loathing he had for Mike and how much he targeted him simply for being black. Henry's father had previously gotten caught killing the black-owned farm's animals and painting swastikas on their house, and his boy had decided to continue the tradition by poisoning the family dog. The film did add a 1v1 between young Henry and Mike near the end of the film, but it seems like that was just because he was the only loser who hadn't shimmied down into the hole yet. His rage towards Mike doesn't seem excessively worse than any of his white victims. Incidentally, Mike defeating Henry replaced Pennywise, proving that even being his lackey didn't protect you from a terrible
Here comes
fate,
the
as
ad
he attacks the
circles.
bullies in the
These ones stay in
sewers,
melee.
killing the psychic known as Belch and driving Henry to madness. There's a whole chapter in the book that covers Mike's dying father, telling him all about a black-owned nightclub that got started in the town a generation before, and how it was eventually burned down by the local version of the Klan, killing dozens horribly. I have to summarize quite a lot here, but I assure you King spent a lot of time developing this story. In the film, this is condensed down to just Mike's house and parents
so
having perished
make
in
sure
a
you keep
fire,
up.
which, don't get me
Jason,
wrong,
so we
is
gotta
still pretty
soak at the
fucked
end
up,
of it.
but it doesn't appear to have been a hate crime. And, almost worse, it's not just the obvious villains who are casually
Try to
racist
kick
as
that in the
heck.
last
The other
second.
kids' parents, the regular townsfolk, and
Yeah, you're
even
getting
the other
your
members of
soaks
the
in.
Losers Club, specifically Richie, all contributed. One of Richie's favorite personas that he would adopt and do loud, stereotypical voices for was N-word Jim. He would regularly attempt to get a laugh out of his friends by doing what was basically a minstrel show that involved talking like a southern United States former slave and yelling the N-word over and over. Between this and the rest of the cast, the N-word is said 101 times in this book. I counted. I am not saying that I lament the loss of racial slurs in the films, but the constant racism was an integral part of the story, and toning it down to the point that it's virtually not there is a bit of a cop-out. Young
I agree
Bill
with
was supposed
that.
to have bright
That's
red
sound
hair,
literary
but I
analysis,
suspect
in
they
my
cast
opinion.
with talent as the main consideration instead of looks. A much more interesting change in regards to this character is the revelation that he was faking his illness the day that Georgie died to get out of playing in the rain. making his internalized guilt over not being there to protect him a lot more acute. Eddie ended up being a bit flanderized in regards to things like his germophobia. He wasn't
Get meleeed
excessively
by an
more anal
ass.
retentive than the rest of the gang originally, but Grazer played it pretty well, so it's at least more funny than annoying. The losers have a short-lived third act breakup in the film that wasn't really present in the book, possibly because this scene didn't occur in the third act originally.
Yes,
As
third act.
visually impressive as it was, I don't personally think that we needed a literal explanation of Pennywise's favorite "we all float down here" catchphrase. The film doesn't go into just what a hold it had over Derry in as much detail compared to the book. There's a moment where an elderly couple in a car completely ignore the very clear case of grievous bodily harm being committed by the side of the road, and the kids comment on how
stand in
quickly
the
people
green
forget
shit.
the missing children,
That's
but in
so
the book
great
it's
of
made a
Delia.
lot more clear that everyone who lived there was incapable of recognizing the pandemic of murders for what it was, because Pennywise didn't want them to. Again, due to the film's condensing of the story, Ben and Beverly's stressful inductions into the Losers Club all happen at once now, instead of occurring weeks apart after several other misadventures. I don't want to dwell on this because it's, a depressing subject even by this story's standards, but Beverly's father's abuse was a lot more openly violent in the book. He beat the crap out of the poor lass every time he was in a scene. The film diverges from the book towards the end, starting with why the Losers Club travels underground to square off with Pennywise. I mean, they were just going to try and kill it and end their torment in the book, but I guess they decided that wasn't sufficient motivation in the film, so they added it kidnapping the group's only female member and all the boys saddling up for a rescue mission. The mental shenanigans required for them to be able to hurt Pennywise were... well, I don't want to say dumbed down, but it's definitely simpler in the film, as the key element seems to have been overcoming their fear of the monster. The power of belief, which was kind of touched upon in the sequel, but not to the same extent, played such a huge role in it. If you genuinely believe something will hurt Pennywise, it does. Even if you're just doing something wild, like reciting bird names out of an ornithology book, as long as you have faith in what you're doing, it has power over it. The biggest example of the kids putting this into practice was during like a mini-boss confrontation that took place in the abandoned house a good while before they went down into the sewers to try to finish him off. Pennywise had been taking on the Wolfman form quite a bit, and they had watched enough monster movies to have an iron-hard belief that silver kills werewolves, so they melted down a silver dollar into ammunition for a slingshot that Bev then proved to be the best shot with. And this did indeed fuck him up. This is replaced by her jamming a poker through his head and then the whole gang just beating the piss out of him underground. Now, yes, I can't definitively say that this was completely absent in the film, because you could certainly make the case that the kids had an iron-felt belief that wailing on the motherfucker was super effective, but it's not front and center of the plot.
Where are we? I need to really quickly...
Make pee-pee.
I'll be right back. Oh, hey Bernard.
That was great, thank you. Herbal lube for a demon doctor.
I don't think there's anything I could roll on other than Transmog. Portal incoming?
Theramore.
Thanks for the run there, guys. Sorry, I'm squishy side. I just did pretty much the whole last fight.
Not a problem. You got
Yeah,
two
you're good.
bolts coming in for everybody, so hopefully you guys get some good stuff in. Also, if anybody needs help running like elves and stuff to get the 616s, just let me know and I'll run them on like various tunes.
No, sir. Little Bernard is right at my feet. He's not so little, he's a big boy. Oh, wow. And the group disbanded. That's another surprise. That's another surprise. And don't worry, Disjoint. You not getting a Twitch notification is the least surprising thing that has happened today. Twitch noties are notoriously very broken. That's why I figured I would do a Hassan Piker style blast off tweet on X the Everything app when I went live a little earlier. And there have been quite a few twists and turns on this stream. A lot of surprising things that have never happened before on this stream have been happening. So it's very cool that you're here. We are in the middle of a Lost in adaptation on the book It by one of the best content creators on YouTube, Dominic Noble. And I had to
Make pee-pee.
really quick. But now that I am finding that this raid has disbanded, I think it's time to take a proper break. So I apologize for you getting here and then me immediately taking a break. But maybe you should see that in the context of another surprise. Oh wow, a surprise break that I was not expecting. I shall return momentarily. What are you doing, Athos? You were screaming at the door. You were screaming. Why? Why? They probably want some food. That's not that surprising. That's what's happening. only fair. Oh. Sorry, Bernard. I bumped my boy with my foot. So I just had to properly apologize with some pets. I did not mean to bump him, and I think I woke him up. But yes, it's only fair that if my babies are going to eat, that I should get to eat too. I have a habit on this stream of not eating my dinner until very late in the evening, which is one of the things that contribute to going to bed later. Because whether you know it or not, especially if you're eating healthy food, your body doesn't want to go to bed right after you've eaten. Like sometimes when you eat really bad for you foods and get the itis, you want to fucking fall right back asleep. But when you're eating a high protein diet, your body wants time to process that shit before you go to sleep. I'm glad you were able to be here for an appearance of the babies disjoint. I wonder what the calamity was that you heard that didn't even register for me. Now, there are a few things we could do that we've never done on stream before. We could do some achievement hunting. And I think we'll do that. Because we're about due for a Laura Walker Cho story, which we don't usually participate in on stream. We'll do a little bit of light achievement hunting so I can actually eat my dinner and not have it sit here next to me while I do a dungeon or a raid. This happens fairly frequently. I can't be the only gamer that's imagined having like 4 arms. You know, like Spider-Man when he gets the 4 arms. And that way you can have 2 arms for playing the game and then 2 arms for also eating the dinner. That would be fucking sick, in my opinion. Alright, what else we got? 90 seconds before story time begins. Can I do anything else with that time? What are you offering me? Celebrate good fun. Does not even give me any tokens. But that's fine. If we're gonna try and do some tanking on our Brewmaster later, I want to do it looking all jadey. This will look really good on a Draenei. Although you will probably not have these cool little kickers here at the bottom. You'll have their little hooves. But I think that'll be a really sick armor that'll get me wanting to play my tank a bit more. Let's get ready for story time. Because we're trying to get Peanut Gallery. We're trying to react to... Hey, we're doing what we're doing on stream. On stream, we're doing reacts. And then also, here for Laura Walker Cho, we're doing reacts.
The forms that Pennywise takes on when he's scaring the shit out of children are, aside from the examples I cited earlier, completely different from the book. He stays in his clown form for the majority of the film, and when he does take other guises, it's just random, scary-ass looking shit. In the book, his scare tactics were a lot more customized to the individual he was fucking with and their recent experiences or deepest anxieties, which most often meant turning into whatever monster they'd seen in a movie recently, like the Wolfman from I Was a Teenage Werewolf, werewolf, a mummy, or the creature from the Black Lagoon. He also became a giant bird after Mike's father told him a scary story involving one, and unsurprisingly, the kid's bullies like Henry. Now, believe it or not, I actually think that this was one of the film's best decisions, and to address why, we have to talk about why so many adaptations of King's work end up getting laughed at. Okay, so my personal theory is, ultimately, when you get right down to it, Stephen King doesn't write about scary monsters. He writes about fear. What his fictional characters are afraid of doesn't matter. He is so good at describing the fear that's overwhelming them, he makes you feel it too. It's all in the writing, in the tone setting, in the suspense, and has virtually nothing whatsoever to do with what the monsters look like. When he's not including weird and unnecessary references to children's testicles, King has an unparalleled ability to use his descriptive writing to tap into core memories of childhood fears. The serial killer waiting in the darkness at the bottom of the basement stairs, the monster under the bed waiting to grab a foot sticking out from under the covers. The things that even as adults make us shiver even though we know it's bullshit. He sets up this scene and describes what the POV character is feeling so well you can't help but also feel it like you're actually there. And then the monster actually grabs the poor bastard's foot, the thing that you know cannot happens. The monster could look like a guy wearing a sheet or fucking Elmo and he could still make it scary because the guy we're seeing his world through is so terrified. By writing about the fear instead of the thing that's causing the fear, he can make anything scary. The scariest moment in The Shining Book is Jack Torrance desperately trying to not look at a doorknob, because he knows that if he looks at it and sees it turning when no one's supposed to be inside the room, then he has to acknowledge that the haunting is real, and the reader instinctively understands that sense of panicked denial. King can make not looking at a doorknob scary. He can make a hose pipe scary. He can make hedges scary. And that's the impossible situation that anyone who's ever tried to adapt his books into film has faced. You can't use his gift for words to make the audience feel the fear in the same way in a visual medium, so in a loyal adaptation, you're left trying to make things that aren't inherently scary, scary looking, and the results are often cat people, trucks with goblin faces, hose pipes with teeth, annoying screechy children, and CGI topiary. It looks like the makers of this film understood this and made the choice to abandon the original monster forms
The Langoliers
in
is
favor of
pretty good,
things
though.
that might actually be horrifying enough to
Langoliers
scare
is really
a
good.
modern audience when they jump out at the kids on screen. It inevitably made it come off as a more surface level adaptation, relying more on jump scares and simply grossing people out to try to elicit a similar emotional response, but I mean, what other choice did they have? You just can't make classic monsters genuinely scary in the year of our Lord 2017. You're going to have to talk about it eventually. My boy Richie actually stood up to his mother at one point. After he was wounded in their first minor victory over Pennywise, his mother tried to cut him off from his friends, but he had the whole "I know you've been giving me placebos" thing in the chamber and basically blackmailed her into backing off. He immediately went back to being a little mama's boy afterwards. It was one of those things that didn't seem that weird because the stories were being told simultaneously. Yes, it was a bit of a reset of his character development in his adult timeline, but you don't feel it as keenly because you didn't even know it was supposed to have happened until towards the end of the book. In a similar case, Ben actually starts his story by standing up to Henry, by not allowing him to cheat off his test, so the asshole nearly gets held back a grade again. Ben also slugged Henry after they fell down the embankment. The little dude had courage. You can't take that away from him. Okay, on to the big stuff. In the book, there was a huge metaphysical element to the club's defeat of Pennywise that was utterly missing in the film. It's a little hard to explain because, well, that's the nature of metaphysicality, but essentially, Pennywise pulls Bill's consciousness out of his body and tries to yeet it out into space and out past the spiritual end of the universe and into his dimension, which is comprised entirely of the deadlights and contains his true form, where he would be able to torture the lad for all eternity. Now, fortunately for Bill, as he's hurled through space and time, he meets another major omission from the story: The, well, the turtle. How do I explain this without sounding bizarre? Oh, wait, I can't, so I guess I'll just lay it out for you. In the Kingverse, there's a second ancient godlike creature with comparable levels of power to Pennywise, but a lot nicer, and it takes the form of a planet-sized turtle that very rarely comes out of its shell. In fact, it supposedly created our universe by vomiting it up during a bad bout of stomach trouble. This stuff
Great.
is so wild, I am honestly surprised that cocaine doesn't manifest itself on the pages of every copy of the book. But, yeah, the turtle, whose name is Maturin, by the way, has been subtly helping the Losers Club their entire lives, guiding them towards each other, places, and objects that would help them survive, but unfortunately appears to have some sort of prime directive thing going on about directly interfering. Excuse me, your turtleness, do you think that maybe you could, you know, punt me back to my planet, or do something about the giant spider demon that's definitely gonna eat my friends in just a few seconds?
Sorry, man, that ain't my jam, but don't tell nobody I told you this, but you should try battling that heinous dude with your mind. Battle of wills, you know what I'm saying? You gotta believe in stuff and shit like that, you know? Okay, I'm gonna go take a little nap now.
The film includes just enough references to turtles to make it feel like they wanted us to know that they knew that they were supposed to deal with a metaphysical planet-sized turtle with commitment issues, but just couldn't go the distance and were asking our forgiveness for it. FYI, Maturin is confirmed to not be God in the Kingverse. He mentions there's an even more powerful being that created the turtle. But yeah. After Bill flies past the turtle and almost makes it all the way to the divide between our universe and the Doom dimension, he takes the turtle's advice and uses his force of will to overcome Pennywise and force him to send him back to his body, while the cowardly asshole clown actually begs for his life. And that is absolutely everything from the book that the film left out. There are no other significant or controversial events that need to be talked about. Nope, nothing else. Nothing disturbing happened at all. Okay, the kids have an orgy in the sewers after defeating Pennywise, okay? I said it. 6 11-year-old boys have sex with 11-year-old Beverly. And the chapter is told from her perspective. Okay, if I try to explain this, can you all keep in mind that I am not trying to justify it? Nothing can justify this particular writing decision. After Pennywise was driven off into hibernation for 30 years, the kids attempt to escape the sewers, but Eddie's until now impeccable sense of direction fails him because he's so freaked out, and they become hopelessly lost. The reasoning behind Beverly's solution to this problem was multifaceted. On a practical level, she wanted to do something that was so incredibly distracting it would chill Eddie out, and on a larger scale, she wanted to permanently bind the Losers Club together, and them all losing their virginities was apparently the best way she could think of. On another level, she wanted to force the group to symbolically become adults through adult actions. It preyed on kids that had more power over the very young, you know, the innocent virgin sacrifices. To make themselves a lot less appealing to it and less under its sway, they needed to become not innocent real fast. However, you know, I don't think you could find anyone in the world who needed this. No one needed to read about a gangbang from an 11-year-old girl's perspective. And we also didn't need to know that Ben has a colossal dong of a penis. King has kind of addressed this. The source of this particular quote has been lost to time, but King has since confirmed its authenticity. I wasn't really thinking about the sexual aspect of it, which is an odd thing to say about, you know, sex. The book dealt with childhood and adulthood, 1958, and grown-ups. The grown-ups don't remember their childhood. None of us remember what we did as children. We think we do, but we don't remember it as it really happened. Intuitively, the losers knew that they had to be together again. The sexual act connected childhood and adulthood. It's another version of the glass tunnel that connects the children's library and the adult library, which is something from the book that didn't make it into the film, presumably because the metaphor was a bit on the nose. Times have changed since I wrote that scene, and now there's more sensitivity to those issues.
Times have
He later
changed,
added,
bro.
It's fascinating to me that there's been so much comment about that single sex scene and so little about the multiple child murders. That must mean something, but I'm not sure what. And I mean, I guess it is a little fucked up that we all found the multiple vivid descriptions of gruesome child death less shocking, but that is partly your fault, Stephen. We got used to the morbidity partly because of your books, but you know, this is like the first time you took it in this particular direction. Final thoughts. Well, actually not final thoughts, because this film was obviously always intended to only be one half of the story, so I've actually decided to withhold judgment until I've covered the sequel in a few weeks. However, if you don't think you can wait that long, I have excellent news for you. It is available right now, like right this very second now. You can watch it without any delay whatsoever on Nebula.
Oh,
Yep,
you
proud to
son of
announce
a
I'm joining
bitch.
the ever-growing prestigious
You
streaming service
son of a bitch, Dom. Well played. Well played, sir. Another banger. I cannot wait until that second half lands on YouTube. That'll be cool.
From Brutosaurus and transmog costs to the upcoming patch, there's a bit to learn today. Hey, it's Sol, and this is Warcraft Weekly, your copium-soaked commentary. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me live wherever I'm streaming. Now let's talk a bit about the Gilded Brutosaur first, and specifically a tried and true and time-consuming way to get it. The chatter about the Brutosaur has gone down considerably since its announcement last week, but there's still plenty of grumbling over the business practice and the ethics. You might hate the existence of this mount as a cash shop item just as much as people are like totally cool with it. So feel free to use the navigation thing to skip to a different subject if you're not comfortable with this, while I give some information and maybe a little bit of a pep talk to the Brutosaur fans out there. And again, let's not judge each other for what players decide to do or not do with their time, which,
4.
by the way,
Where's
you
the
don't have a
fifth
lot of.
one?
The Brutosaur costs 6 WoW tokens, or 6 months of game time, and as of this writing, the token is worth this much when someone spends real money to buy one. For the sake of simplicity, let's kind of round this up a bit to 300,000 gold for a token, or 1.8 million gold. If it's around 60 or so days
There's the last
until
one.
the
Okay.
Brutosaur leaves the market,
We'll do them in order.
that's like 30,000 gold a day when we do the math. So you're going to want to really sit down and ask yourself, can you swing that? There's a lot to consider, like, you know, not everyone wants to play every single day. Some folks only have a few hours a week, and others have no time on the weekdays while they have free time on the
Did I eat
weekends.
them too fast? Was that
You know,
the
it
problem?
goes the other way around too. Everyone lands somewhere, and your experience is your own. The other day, I ran a little experiment to provide to you folks just a small talking point. I'm not trying to prove anything or flex. What I'm going to share with you is not even like cold hard math. It's just a takeaway to help you decide if this mount is worth going for. There are plenty of ways to make gold, but I decided to take on the most basic method
There it
of
is.
gold making in World of Warcraft, gathering, to see where
Yep.
they would go. Gathering is very accessible to WoW players, and also
You just do
it's a gameplay choice. You know, like lots of us play this game to, you know, beat up bad guys or fellow players and get achievements and dress up all pretty. Professions, and especially gathering, it's an opportunity cost. It means you're not doing any of those other endgame combat dress up things. You're doing